You know, I came to the realization that being a minister among Native people and being an educator among Native people isn't very different at all. In fact, there's more similarities than there are differences. And you know, I learned that the hard way. You know, recently I've been working with the Norman Public Schools, Indian Ed. And I've been over there for a little over a month. And I have to admit, it was one of the longest months of my life. Because those that work for the state of Oklahoma, they had to wait an entire month just to get their check. And so I had to wait a whole month just to get paid. But you know what? I was even more disappointed when I received the check. And I came to the same realization in the ministry there in the public school system that there's no money in this field. There's no money in educating our Native people. And so this has produced, allowed us to see and reveal, these two types of individuals that are among us. You have those, they work among us, they do their job, they do just enough to get by. Yet they don't have a real calling to Native education. They don't have a real passion for Native students. They're simply there on the job. And then you have those that are committed, those that have a calling, those that have a passion, those that are devoted to the welfare and the education of our Native people at large. These are the committed ones. These are the ones that devote themselves entirely. They make self-sacrifices for the welfare and the education of our Native people. And I want to encourage you, we need the latter rather than the former. Because we're in a very precarious predicament among our people. Many of our young people are falling by the wayside, incarcerated, bound to alcohol, bound to drugs, living a life without any education. And if you're not careful, and we rely on those first type of individuals, not to give them the whole blame of what's going on among our communities, you're going to end up with students like me. Even though I went to college, man, I graduated high school with a 0.7. I don't know how I did it. But all I know is this: when now I graduated, I grabbed that diploma and I took off running. I never looked back. And I was just waiting to see if they was going to call and say they made a mistake. But they never did. And as long as I could remember, I've always struggled in education. As far as back as elementary, I was always in special reading. I was always in special math. I was probably in special recess if they had it. And so I struggled constantly. And I'm sure there was a JOM. I'm sure there was supposed to be Native educators in my school, but I never seen them. They were never there, present in my life. And so I remember one day she came into class and she told us that the school had entered into the National Spelling Bee contest. And I don't know what possessed this old lady's mind. She had entered the special ed class into the National Spelling Bee contest. And so there we was, my class with the rest of the normal kids. And so we're there, and we're in the gymnasium. The entire school is there. Everybody's come to watch. And so I remember they had it all set up. They had the judges right there in the front. They had a microphone, just like you see on ESPN, right there. And whenever someone would get up there and they spell a word incorrectly, those judges would ring that bell and ding them off the stage. And so I was watching my classmates get dinged left and right. Special ed kids were just falling by the wayside. And so then it came to my turn. And it came to my turn, and I got up there, and I was kind of nervous. And I stepped up to the mic, and they gave me my word for the first round. And you know, to everybody's astonishment and my own astonishment, I spelled the word correctly. And so I passed on to the second round. And when the second round came, I got up there, and the words, they got even more complicated. They got more difficult. And so as I got up there, they gave me my word. And I just thought, you know, this is probably as far as I'm going to get right here. That first time was just luck. And so they gave me the word. To my astonishment and everybody else's astonishment, I spelled the word correctly again. And so there I went to the semifinals. And I'm there standing with many bright and intelligent students. And I'm the only one representing special ed. And Indian ed. And they get up there and they start spelling those words, and I see smart kids getting dinged off and they're walking off. And so I just knew that was it for me. And so I got up there. They gave me my word, and I spelled it correctly again. And I went all the way to the very finals of our school district for the National Spelling Bee Contest. And you know, after all that, you know, I don't recall any Native educators being around in my life. I don't recall anyone encouraging me. I don't recall anyone taking time out of their life to send me to a conference, to do anything like that. All I remember about Indian Ed in my school was that we got this big chief notebook and some free pencils. And that was it. After that spelling bee contest, you know, I went on back to my routine special ed life. And you know, it wasn't too long after that, during that time, that I began to turn to alcohol. And I began to run around with the wrong crowd. I began to become a troubled student. And you know, many school officials, many teachers, they just gave up on me. And I began to fall into trouble outside of school as well. I would end up in juvenile detention. I would end up sent off here and there. Soon I would become addicted to alcohol. They'd send me to rehab, and even rehab couldn't solve the problem for me. And so I remember during that time, my life felt like it was falling apart. I felt like I wasn't going to amount to anything. I was never going to do anything with my life. And I remember I felt this emptiness in my heart and in my life. I felt this void that was there. And I began to contemplate suicide again and again. I thought maybe suicide is the only answer. Maybe taking my life is the only solution. And I thought about it all the time. You know, there was a time I was running around, and I was with some older people. And I was with this older guy, and he was driving in his truck, and when we was drinking and driving around. And we was going down I-35 here. And as he was driving, he was swerving all over I-35 and as we was going down the road. Even though I was intoxicated as well, I thought, man, I could drive better than this old man. And so I said, man, pull over, let me drive. And so he pulled on over. We got out, we switched. And I remember I jumped into the pickup and I put my hands on the steering wheel. And that's all I remember doing. And I blacked out for the rest of the night. When I woke up in a county jail there in Norman, just south of here. And I woke up and I had all these bruises, and I had my head was scratched up, scraped up on top, and my mouth was busted. And I looked down at my shoes, and somebody stole my shoelaces. And I said, man, me and that old man got into a fight. He done stole my shoelaces. And so when I realized where I was at, I went to the door and I began to bang on that jail cell door. And I began to holler for the jailer to let me out of there because I was too young to be in there. I was only about 16. And so after a little time passed, they finally let me out. You know, I thought they were just going to let me go, but they decided just to send me on to the juvenile detention there in Norman. And so I was sitting there talking with the sheriff. And you know, he's getting my information. And he says to me, he says, man, Jay, you're lucky to be alive. He said, we found you out in the middle street, walking around in the middle of the night. And he reached into his drawer in his desk, and he grabbed those shoelaces, and he put those shoelaces in front of me. And he said, it is our policy when an inmate is suicidal, when an inmate is a threat to his own life, to take the shoelaces of those inmates. We need individuals that's going to go all the way with our Native students. We need those that are going to be the best because our young people are in a dangerous predicament. Their lives are at stake. You stand in the gap between them and death. You stand in the gap between them and incarceration. You stand in the gap between them and alcoholism. You stand in the gap between them and drug addiction. You stand in the gap between them and even health problems in their lives. We need those that will commit themselves fully, that will devote all that they have, that will make all the sacrifices needed for the welfare and the